For the last 40 years, beekeepers have been fighting a deadly invasive species. This is a video about a new technology that can help end that fight. In 1987, a single mistake by just one beekeeper led to the most costly and destructive event in all of beekeeping history. The Varroa destructor mite had been discovered in the hives of one Gary Oreskovic. Oreskovic had been operating as a commercial bee supplier at the time. An unknown beekeeper had illegally smuggled queen bees into Florida from South America, and Oreskovic exported these queens across the country. Now, at least one of those queen bees was carrying a hitchhiker, the invasive Varroa mite, which is native to Asia and has evolved to parasitize the Asian honeybee, Apis cerana. Unfortunately, the European honeybee, Apis mellifera, which is the most commonly kept honeybee across the world due to specific reasons which I won't get into in this video, never evolved to deal with the Varroa mite, making them extremely vulnerable to this parasitic mite. After discovering the mites, authorities destroyed infected colonies, but it was too late. By 1995, just 8 years later, Varroa mite had spread to every state in the country. In 2025 alone, it's estimated to have cost beekeepers over $700 million, and it's the leading cause of failed colonies, resulting in over 1.7 million lost hives a year. The real threat of Varroa mite in a colony is that it spreads diseases and viruses that weaken the bees, causing birth defects such as shriveled wings, as well as general weakness and eventually death. It's almost like the whole colony is sharing hypodermic needles as the mites feed on the defenseless bees. Over the decades, beekeepers have developed various ways to control this pest, usually involving some chemical miticides. While these can be effective, they each have their own downsides as well. Some require specialized equipment to use, most can be harmful to the queens or bees if used in improper amounts, and some aren't even safe to use when bees are making honey for human consumption. However, in September of 2025, the EPA approved a new kind of mite treatment, one that could stop Varroa mites in their tracks. This new treatment is called Norroa, and it's not a poison or chemical treatment like the others, rather, it's a specially designed biological weapon that stops Varroa mites from reproducing. In this video, I'll answer all your questions about this new treatment, from how it works and the science behind it, to where you can get it and how to apply it. So let's start with how it works. In order to understand that, we have to look at the biology of the mite.
Let's imagine that we're inside a cell in a mite, and inside that cell is some DNA. Now, normally we think of DNA as a blueprint, but DNA isn't just a single blueprint like we often imagine. It's actually more like a library containing thousands or even millions of blueprints or recipes, which describe how to build everything else. To use the library, the cell can send a messenger to make a copy of a recipe and then deliver that copy to a worker who can use the recipe to build something. For example, if this is an eye cell, it might be making some protein that's part of the eye.
What I'm describing isn't unique to mites. In fact, it's an ancient biological process dating all the way back to when we were single-celled organisms. As such, it happens in every animal. In fact, it's happening in you right now. But what if I told you there's another equally ancient process that we can tap into? A self-defense mechanism against another kind of parasite, a virus.
What I have here is a virus that's attempting to infect a cell. Now, normally, if a virus is successful, it hijacks the machinery of the cell. Instead of messengers collecting recipes from the cell's DNA, the virus can force the messengers to copy its own genetic material, which is then passed to the workers, who then build copies of the virus. This is how viruses reproduce. To prevent this, every cell has a guard that's constantly on the lookout for something that looks like a virus. When a virus is detected, the guard sounds the alarm and then cuts the virus up into little bits. But it doesn't end there. Since the guard sounded the alarm, a special cleanup crew picks up the pieces of the virus and goes on a seek and destroy mission. Their target, any messengers carrying the virus code. This way, the cell can completely shut down production of the virus, even after being infected.
All right, so that's all fine and dandy, but how exactly does it help us?
Well, it turns out that we can create something that looks like a virus even though it's not. It's just wearing a virus costume. But inside that costume is a genetic code which matches part of the mite's DNA. This means that when the defense mechanism is activated and this fake virus is destroyed, the cleanup crew will target any messenger carrying that recipe. But in this case, we've chosen the specific recipe to destroy. This process is called RNA interference. It's a form of gene suppression, and it's exactly how Norroa works.
It's delivered as a sugary syrup that's loaded with a virus lookalike, which, when introduced to a mite cell, will cause the mite to stop production of a specific protein which it needs to reproduce. The bees will store this syrup in the hive and feed it to developing larvae. Then, when a mite feeds on a bee that has Norroa in its system, it's also exposed to the treatment, and any female mite will not be able to lay eggs. It's sort of like vaccinating your hive against Varroa mite instead of treating the hive once it's infected. The only thing is, it does wear off and needs to be reapplied. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second, if this stuff messes with mite DNA, then how do we know it's really safe for the bees? And I mean, what about humans that eat honey out of the hive? These are really good, valid questions, and you'd be right to ask these.
What I have here is the DNA for the Varroa mite, but also the DNA for honeybees and for humans. Fortunately, the code in Norroa is extremely specific to a sequence of code or a recipe in the Varroa mite DNA. It simply won't match any recipe in human DNA, but it actually does match a section of DNA in honeybees. The thing is, the section that it matches on is what we call non-coding. It's sort of like a structural component of the DNA, not actually a recipe, more like a wall or a shelf in the library, which means that there won't be any messengers carrying around that code to destroy.
It's also worth noting that Norroa has undergone over a decade of field trials and has shown no negative effects on the health, behavior, or longevity of honeybee queens, workers, or larvae. And the EPA's review concluded that there are no discernible effects on humans, other insects, or endangered species due to the highly specific genetic code used. I also want to point out that this is not the same thing as genetic modification or GMO. We're not actually modifying the mite's DNA. Instead, we're tricking the mite into activating the emergency shutoff protocol on its protein factories. One additional safety measure is that it's designed to rapidly break down in the environment. So let's talk about where to get it and how to use it. But first, I want to caution that it is against the law to use any miticide or pesticide, including Norroa, in any manner inconsistent with the label. So I've included a link to the label in the description. So with that said, it's incredibly easy to apply, and you don't need any special equipment. You can use it anytime you could feed your bees syrup, but there must be open brood. All you have to do is place the pouches in the brood chamber above or below the frames, and let the bees take care of the rest. However, if you apply it during a heavy nectar flow, it may be less effective as it could be diluted. You need to use 2 pouches per brood box, and you can only apply it twice a year, and it's effective for up to 18 weeks after administering the treatment. As far as timing, it's critical to remember that this will not knock mite populations down, but instead it will stop their population from growing. It's generally recommended to use it in the spring and again in the fall, but since you may only use it twice a year, that does mean there is a gap in the treatment, a window where the mites could start reproducing. And this is where traditional tools such as existing chemical miticides might be used. It remains true that we should not rely on a single mite treatment because the Varroa mite can rapidly build a resistance to any single miticide. So the best practice is to layer multiple different control strategies so that no single treatment will become ineffective, and it's no different for Norroa. As far as where to purchase this new treatment, I got mine from Man Lake. Again, you can check the description for a link, but I believe you can get this from various other online retailers as well. I have, however, not seen it being sold on Amazon. So I actually used Norroa in my hive this season for the first time, as you may have seen in a previous video. Since it was approved so recently by the EPA in September of 2025, this season, the 2026 season, is realistically the first time that it's going to be available in the beekeeping community. If you're curious to see how effective it really is in the field, then stick around because I'm going to be doing multiple videos with updates on the efficacy of this treatment as it progresses through the season, measuring how the mite population grows or hopefully doesn't grow, so stick around for that. As always, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. How do you like to treat for mites?